Once upon a time, in a far-off kingdom, there lived a beautiful princess named Snow White. Her skin was as white as snow, her lips as red as blood, and her hair as black as ebony. Her beauty was known throughout the land, but so was her kind heart. Snow White's mother, the queen, had passed away when she was very young, and her father, the king, remarried a woman who was vain and cruel. This new queen had a magic mirror, and every day she would ask it, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror would always reply, "You, my queen, are the fairest of them all." This pleased the queen greatly, for she was obsessed with being the most beautiful. As Snow White grew older, her beauty became more radiant. One day, when the queen asked her mirror the usual question, it replied, "You, my queen, are fair. It is true. But Snow White is even fairer than you." Enraged with jealousy, the queen decided to get rid of Snow White. The queen summoned a huntsman and ordered him to take Snow White into the forest and kill her. She demanded proof of Snow White's death and asked for her heart. The kind huntsman, unable to harm the innocent princess, took her deep into the forest but could not go through with the wicked deed. "Run away, Snow White," he urged her. "The queen wants you dead. Hide and never return to the castle." Terrified, Snow White fled through the dark forest, her heart pounding. She wandered for hours until she stumbled upon a little cottage. Curious and exhausted, she entered. Inside, everything was small but beautifully crafted. There were 7 tiny chairs, 7 tiny beds, and a table set with 7 tiny plates. Snow White, feeling safe for the first time in hours, ate a little food, drank a little water, and then lay down on one of the beds, falling into a deep sleep. The cottage belonged to 7 dwarfs who worked in a nearby mine. When they returned home that evening, they were surprised to find Snow White sleeping in their beds. Who is this young girl? They wondered. Snow White woke up and, seeing the dwarfs, was at first frightened, but they were kind and gentle, and she quickly told them her story. The dwarfs felt sorry for Snow White and invited her to stay with them. "You can stay here and keep house for us," they offered. Snow White gratefully accepted, and from that day on, she lived happily with the dwarfs, taking care of their home and cooking their meals. Meanwhile, back at the castle, the queen once again consulted her mirror. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" To her horror, the mirror replied, "You, my queen, are fair. It is true. But Snow White, beyond the mountains with the 7 dwarfs, is still 1,000 times fairer than you." The queen was furious. She disguised herself as an old peddler woman and set off to find Snow White. She arrived at the dwarf's cottage and offered Snow White a beautiful, shiny apple. "Take a bite, dearie," she coaxed. Snow White, not suspecting any danger, took a bite. Immediately, she fell to the ground, unconscious the apple was poisoned. When the dwarfs returned, they were heartbroken to find Snow White lifeless. They could not bear to bury her, so they placed her in a glass coffin in the forest, where they kept watch over her day and night. One day, a prince riding through the forest saw Snow White in her glass coffin. Struck by her beauty, he fell in love with her at first sight. "Please, let me take her to my castle," he begged the dwarfs. "I cannot live without her." The dwarfs, moved by his plea, agreed. As the prince's servants carried the coffin, they stumbled, and the piece of poisoned apple dislodged from Snow White's throat. She opened her eyes, and seeing the prince, she smiled. "You saved me," she said, realizing she had been given a second chance at life. The prince was overjoyed. He asked Snow White to marry him, and she agreed. They returned to the kingdom, where the wicked queen, upon hearing the news, was so filled with rage that she fled and was never seen again. Snow White and the prince were married in a grand celebration. The 7 dwarfs were honored guests, and everyone in the kingdom rejoiced. Snow White and the prince lived happily ever after, ruling their kingdom with kindness and fairness. And Snow White never forgot the friends who had saved her, always visiting the dwarfs and keeping them close to her heart. Once upon a time, in a charming village, there lived a sweet and kind girl named Cinderella. She had a gentle heart and a smile that could brighten the gloomiest day. But Cinderella's life was not easy. After her mother passed away, her father remarried a woman who had 2 daughters of her own. They were jealous and mean, always making Cinderella do all the chores while they lounged around. Cinderella's stepmother and stepsisters were cruel. They made her clean the house from top to bottom, cook all the meals, and even mend their clothes. Despite the hard work, Cinderella remained kind and hopeful. She dreamed of a day when she would be free from their cruelty. One day, an announcement arrived at their home. The prince of the kingdom was hosting a grand ball at the palace. Every young maiden in the land was invited, for the prince was seeking a bride. Cinderella's heart leaped with joy at the thought of attending the ball. However, her stepmother laughed and said, "You, Cinderella, you have nothing to wear. Besides, who would want to dance with you?" Undeterred, Cinderella helped her stepsisters prepare for the ball. She sewed their dresses and styled their hair, all the while dreaming of her own chance to go. When the night of the ball arrived, her stepmother and stepsisters left her alone in the house. Cinderella sat by the fireplace, feeling tears welling up in her eyes. Suddenly, a warm, shimmering light filled the room. Out of the light stepped a beautiful fairy with sparkling wings. "Don't cry, dear Cinderella," the fairy said with a gentle smile. "I am your fairy godmother, and you shall go to the ball." With a wave of her magic wand, the fairy godmother transformed a pumpkin into a magnificent golden carriage. She turned 6 mice into 6 elegant white horses, and the old family dog into a grand coachman. Finally, she transformed Cinderella's ragged clothes into a dazzling gown of silver and glass slippers that shone like stars. But remember, the fairy godmother warned, the magic will only last until midnight. You must return home before the clock strikes 12. Cinderella could hardly believe her eyes. She thanked her fairy godmother and hurried into the carriage. As she arrived at the palace, everyone turned to look at the mysterious, beautiful girl. The prince himself was captivated and asked her to dance. They danced all night, and Cinderella felt like she was in a dream. Time flew by, and before she knew it, the clock began to chime midnight. "I must go," Cinderella exclaimed and ran from the ballroom. As she fled, one of her glass slippers slipped off her foot, but she didn't have time to retrieve it. She leaped into her carriage just as the final chime sounded, and in an instant, she was back in her old clothes, the magic gone. The next day, the prince sent out a proclamation. He would marry the girl whose foot fit the glass slipper. His servants went from house to house, trying the slipper on every maiden. When they arrived at Cinderella's home, her stepsisters tried desperately to fit into the slipper, but it was no use. Cinderella timidly asked if she could try. Her stepmother and stepsisters laughed, but the prince's servant allowed it. As soon as Cinderella's foot slipped into the glass slipper, it fit perfectly. Her stepmother and stepsisters were astonished as the servant declared, "This is the prince's true love." The prince arrived shortly after and recognized Cinderella immediately. He took her hand and promised to cherish her forever. Her fairy godmother appeared once more, transforming her rags into a stunning wedding gown. Cinderella forgave her stepmother and stepsisters for their cruelty, for her kind heart could not hold a grudge. Cinderella and the prince were married in a beautiful ceremony and lived happily ever after. They ruled the kingdom with kindness and generosity. ensuring that everyone lived joyfully and peacefully. And so, Cinderella's dream came true, and she proved that with a kind heart and a little bit of magic, anything is possible. Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, a joyful celebration took place. The king and queen had been blessed with a beautiful baby daughter, whom they named Aurora. The whole kingdom rejoiced, and a grand feast was held in honor of the princess. Among the guests were 3 good fairies, Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather, who came to bestow their magical gifts upon the newborn. Flora, with a wave of her wand, blessed Aurora with the gift of beauty. "May your beauty shine as brightly as the morning sun," she said. Fauna followed, granting Aurora the gift of song. "May your voice be as sweet as a nightingale's melody," she added. Before Merryweather could give her gift, a sudden gust of wind blew through the great hall, and a dark figure appeared. It was Maleficent, a wicked fairy who had not been invited to the celebration. Angered by the snub, she cast a dreadful curse on the baby princess. On her 16th birthday, Aurora shall prick her finger on a spinning wheel and fall into a deep sleep from which she will never awaken, Maleficent declared, her voice echoing through the hall. With a wicked laugh, she vanished. The king and queen were devastated, but Merryweather stepped forward. "I cannot undo the curse," she said, "but I can soften it." She waved her wand and proclaimed, if Aurora should prick her finger and fall into a sleep, she will not die. Instead, she will slumber until true love's kiss awakens her. Despite the softened curse, the king ordered all spinning wheels in the kingdom to be burned to protect Aurora. As an additional precaution, the 3 good fairies disguised themselves as peasant women and took Aurora to a hidden cottage in the forest where they raised her as their own, calling her Briar Rose. Years passed, and Aurora grew into a beautiful and kind young woman, unaware of her royal heritage. On the day of her 16th birthday, the fairies sent her to gather berries while they prepared a special surprise. As she wandered through the forest, she sang with a voice as sweet as Fauna's gift. Her melody attracted the attention of a young prince named Philip, who was riding through the forest. He was enchanted by her beauty and voice, and they quickly became friends. Meanwhile, at the cottage, the fairies revealed Aurora's true identity and her impending return to the castle. However, Maleficent had discovered Aurora's whereabouts and plotted to fulfill her curse. Using her dark magic, she lured Aurora to a hidden room in the castle, where an old spinning wheel stood. As if in a trance, Aurora touched the spindle and pricked her finger, falling into a deep sleep. The heartbroken fairies placed Aurora on a magnificent bed in the highest tower and cast a spell over the entire castle, putting everyone into a deep sleep. This way, when Aurora awakens, she will not be alone, they said. Prince Philip, learning of Aurora's fate, was determined to save her. Armed with a magical sword and shield given by the good fairies, he fought his way to the castle, braving thorns and battling Maleficent, who transformed into a fearsome dragon. With the fairies' help, Philip triumphed, striking Maleficent down. Reaching the highest tower, Prince Philip found Aurora lying peacefully. Remembering the fairies' words, he gently kissed her. Instantly, Aurora's eyes fluttered open, and she awoke from her enchanted sleep. The spell over the castle was broken, and everyone awoke, rejoicing. Aurora and Philip were reunited with her parents, and a grand celebration was held. They soon married, and their love and bravery became legendary throughout the kingdom. The good fairies continued to watch over them, ensuring that peace and happiness reigned. And so, Princess Aurora and Prince Philip lived happily ever after, proving that true love can conquer even the darkest of curses. Once upon a time, in a small village, there lived a kind couple who longed to have a child. Their house was next to a beautiful garden filled with the most magnificent flowers and herbs. However, this garden belonged to a wicked enchantress named Gothel, who forbade anyone from entering it. One day, the wife fell gravely ill and craved a particular plant called rampion, which grew only in Gothel's garden. Desperate to save his wife, the husband sneaked into the garden at night to gather some rampion. He returned safely, and the wife made a delicious salad from the rampion, feeling better instantly. However, the next night, the craving returned even stronger, and the husband once again sneaked into the garden. This time, the enchantress caught him. "How dare you steal from my garden?" Gothel demanded, her eyes blazing with anger. Trembling, the husband explained his wife's illness and begged for mercy. After a moment, Gothel's expression softened slightly, but her voice remained cold. "I will let you go and allow you to take all the rampion you need, but you must give me your firstborn child." Terrified but desperate, the husband agreed. Shortly after, the wife gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. True to her word, Gothel appeared and took the child away, naming her Rapunzel. Gothel raised Rapunzel in a tall tower hidden deep in the forest. The tower had neither stairs nor doors, only a single window at the very top. As Rapunzel grew, her hair became incredibly long and golden, cascading down like a waterfall. The enchantress would visit her by standing at the base of the tower and calling out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel, who knew no other life, would let her long braid fall, and Gothel would climb up. Though lonely, Rapunzel spent her days singing and dreaming of the world beyond the tower. One day, a young prince was riding through the forest when he heard Rapunzel's beautiful singing. Entranced, he followed the sound until he reached the tower. Hiding behind a tree, he watched in amazement as Gothel called out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair," and climbed up the golden braid. Determined to meet the girl with the enchanting voice, the prince waited until Gothel left. He approached the tower and repeated the call, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." To his delight, the braid fell, and he climbed up. Rapunzel was startled, but curious. She had never seen a man before. The prince, charmed by her innocence and beauty, introduced himself and told her about the world outside. They talked for hours, and the prince promised to return. For many days, the prince visited Rapunzel, and they fell in love. They devised a plan for Rapunzel to escape. The prince would bring a piece of silk each time he visited, and Rapunzel would weave a ladder. However, one day, Gothel discovered the prince in the tower. Furious, she cut off Rapunzel's hair and banished her to a desolate place in the forest. She then tied the severe braid to a hook by the window and waited. When the prince arrived and called out, Gothel lowered the braid. As the prince climbed up, he was horrified to find Gothel instead of Rapunzel. In her anger, Gothel pushed the prince, and he fell into a thorn bush, which blinded him. For many months, the prince wandered the forest, searching for Rapunzel. One day, he heard a familiar song and followed the sound. There, in a clearing, he found Rapunzel, who had survived alone in the forest. Overjoyed, she ran to him, and as they embraced, her tears of joy fell onto his eyes. Miraculously, his sight was restored. The prince led Rapunzel back to his kingdom, where they were warmly welcomed. They married and lived happily ever after, bringing peace and prosperity to the land. And as for Gothel, she was never seen again. And so, Rapunzel and her prince lived a life filled with love and adventure, always grateful for the magic that brought them together. Once upon a time, in the depths of the ocean, there lived a young mermaid named Ariel. Ariel was the youngest daughter of King Triton, the ruler of the Undersea Kingdom. She was a curious and adventurous mermaid with a beautiful voice that could enchant anyone who heard it. Ariel spent her days exploring sunken ships and collecting treasures from the human world, which fascinated her endlessly. Ariel longed to know more about humans and their world above the sea. She often swam to the surface to watch ships sail by and to catch glimpses of people on the shore. Her father, King Triton, disapproved of this curiosity. "Humans are dangerous, Ariel. You must stay away from them," he warned her. One night, during a violent storm, Ariel saw a ship struggling in the waves. She watched in horror as the ship was struck by lightning and began to sink. Among the crew was a handsome young prince who fell into the sea. Without thinking of the danger, Ariel swam to his rescue, pulling him to shore. She stayed by his side, singing to him until he awoke. When he opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was Ariel's face. Before he could speak, Ariel heard others approaching and quickly dove back into the sea, leaving the prince to wonder who his savior was. From that moment on, Ariel could think of nothing but the prince. She wanted to be with him, to walk on land, and to live among humans. Desperate to find a way, she remembered the sea witch, Ursula, who was known for her dark magic. Despite the warnings, Ariel swam to Ursula's lair, determined to seek her help. Ursula agreed to help Ariel, but at a great cost. "I can give you legs to walk on land," Ursula said, "but in return, you must give me your voice." Ariel hesitated, knowing her voice was precious, but her love for the prince was stronger. She agreed to the deal, and Ursula cast her spell. Ariel felt a sharp pain as her tail transformed into legs, and she found herself washed up on the shore, unable to speak. The prince, who had been searching for his mysterious rescuer, found Ariel on the beach. He took her to his castle, where she was given clothes and care. Although Ariel could not speak, the prince was captivated by her kindness and beauty. They spent many days together, and Ariel felt happier than ever, though she missed her voice. However, Ursula was not done with her mischief. Disguised as a beautiful maiden, she used Ariel's voice to enchant the prince. The prince, hearing the voice that had saved him, believed Ursula was his true love and announced his intention to marry her. Ariel was heartbroken, but could do nothing without her voice. On the day of the wedding, Ariel's friends, the sea creatures, discovered Ursula's plan. They managed to steal back Ariel's voice and returned it to her just in time. As the prince and Ursula stood at the altar, Ariel's voice was restored. She cried out, and the prince immediately recognized the voice of his true savior. Ursula, furious at being thwarted, revealed her true form and tried to drag Ariel back to the sea. But King Triton, alerted by Ariel's friends, arrived and confronted Ursula. In the ensuing battle, Triton used his trident to banish Ursula forever. With Ursula gone, the spell was broken, and Ariel's voice was hers to keep. The prince, now knowing the truth, declared his love for Ariel. He asked King Triton for his blessing to marry her. Seeing his daughter's happiness, Triton agreed, and with a wave of his trident, he gave Ariel the permanent gift of human legs. Ariel and the prince were married in a grand celebration attended by both humans and merfolk. They built a bridge between their worlds, fostering understanding and friendship. Ariel finally lived her dream, exploring the land she had always been curious about, with the prince by her side. And so, Ariel and her prince lived happily ever after, proving that love and bravery can bridge even the widest of gaps between worlds. Once upon a time, in a far-off kingdom, there lived a wealthy merchant with 3 daughters. The youngest, Belle, was the most beautiful and kind-hearted of them all. She loved to read and dreamt of adventures far beyond her village. Despite her beauty, Belle was humble and gentle, and her sisters, who were jealous of her, often teased her. One day, the merchant received news that one of his ships, thought lost at sea, had returned to port. Overjoyed, he set out at once, promising to bring back gifts for his daughters. While her sisters asked for fine dresses and jewels, Belle requested only a single rose. Upon arriving at the port, the merchant discovered that his ship's cargo had been seized to pay off debts, leaving him as poor as before. Disheartened, the merchant began his journey home. As night fell, he became lost in a dense forest. Cold and hungry, he stumbled upon a magnificent castle and entered, hoping to find shelter. Inside, he found a grand feast laid out, but no one in sight. Gratefully, he ate and then fell asleep in one of the luxurious beds. The next morning, as he was about to leave, the merchant saw a beautiful rose garden. Remembering Belle's request, he picked a single rose. Suddenly, a fearsome beast appeared, furious at the merchant's theft. "You shall pay for this with your life," the beast roared. Terrified, the merchant begged for mercy and explained the rose was for his daughter. The beast considered this and then said, "Very well, you may go, but in exchange, you must send your daughter to live here in your place. She must come willingly, or you shall return and face the consequences." The merchant returned home, sorrowful and ashamed. When Belle saw the rose and heard what had happened, she bravely decided to go to the castle in her father's place. "Do not worry, father. I will go to the beast. Perhaps he will not be as terrible as he seems." Belle arrived at the castle, where the beast greeted her with surprising gentleness. He showed her to a beautiful room and assured her that she was free to roam the castle, except for one forbidden swing. Though she was initially afraid, Belle soon discovered that the beast was not cruel, but lonely and sad. He treated her with kindness and respect, and over time, she began to see the goodness within him. Each evening, they dined together, sharing stories and laughter. The beast, enchanted by Belle's beauty and spirit, asked her every night if she would marry him. Gently, she declined, saying she needed more time. Despite this, they grew closer, and a deep friendship blossomed between them. One day, Belle used a magic mirror the beast had given her to see her father. She saw that he was gravely ill and begged the beast to let her go to him. The beast, though heartbroken, agreed. "Go to your father," he said, "but promise to return in a week, or I shall surely die of a broken heart." Belle returned home and nursed her father back to health. Her sisters, envious of her fine clothes and the love the beast had for her, schemed to keep her from returning to the castle. They pretended to be kind and begged her to stay longer. Belle, feeling guilty, extended her visit, but each day she longed to return to the beast. One night, Belle had a terrible dream that the beast was dying. She awoke in tears, realizing how much she loved him. Without a moment's hesitation, she set off for the castle. When she arrived, she found the beast lying in the rose garden, weak and fading. "Beast, I'm back! Please don't die," she cried, her tears falling on his fur. "I love you." At that moment, a brilliant light surrounded the beast, and he began to transform. Before Belle's astonished eyes, the beast became a handsome prince. The enchantment that had turned him into a beast was broken by Belle's love. The prince explained that a wicked enchantress had cursed him to live as a beast until someone could love him, despite his appearance. Belle's courage and love had saved him. The castle and its inhabitants, who had also been under the spell, returned to their original forms. Belle and the prince were married in a grand celebration. The kingdom rejoiced, for the tale of their love had spread far and wide, bringing hope and joy to all who heard it. Belle and the prince ruled with kindness and wisdom, ensuring that their kingdom was a place of peace and happiness. And so, Belle and her prince lived happily ever after, their love proving that true beauty comes from within. Once upon a time, in a grand kingdom, there lived a king with 12 beautiful daughters. The princesses were kind and graceful, and each night they would go to bed in their shared room, their shoes neatly placed by their beds. However, every morning, their shoes were found worn out, as if they had been dancing all night. The king was puzzled and concerned, for he had no idea where his daughters went each night. Determined to solve the mystery, the king issued a proclamation. Anyone who could discover where the princesses went at night would be rewarded with their choice of one of the princesses' hands in marriage and a grand reward. However, if they failed after 3 nights, they would be banished from the kingdom forever. Many princes and noblemen tried their luck, but none succeeded. One day, a young soldier named Jack, who had been wounded in battle and discharged, arrived at the kingdom. Hearing about the king's proclamation, he decided to try his luck. On his way to the castle, he met an old woman who seemed to know his purpose. She gave him a cloak and said, "This cloak will make you invisible. Use it wisely, and you will discover the secret of the 12 princesses. Do not drink the wine they offer you, for it is laced with a sleeping potion." Jack thanked the old woman and continued to the castle. The king welcomed him and showed him to a room next to the princess's chamber. That night, Jack pretended to drink the wine the princesses offered him and feigned sleep. The princesses, believing he was asleep, giggled and dressed in their finest gowns. They tapped a secret pattern on their bedposts, and a hidden door opened in the floor. Jack, using the cloak of invisibility, followed the princesses through the secret door. He found himself in an enchanting underground world with silver, gold, and diamond trees. The princesses walked through this magical forest until they reached a shimmering lake. 12 princes awaited them in boats, each taking a princess by the hand and rowing to a grand castle on the other side. In the castle, a magnificent ball was in full swing. The princesses danced joyfully, their shoes growing more worn with every step. Jack, still invisible, took a golden goblet as proof and watched until the princesses, exhausted, were ready to return. The princesses retraced their steps, passing back through the magical forest and up the hidden staircase, returning to their beds just before dawn. The next morning, Jack presented the golden goblet to the king and told him everything he had seen. The king was astonished and summoned his daughters. Realizing their secret was discovered, the princesses confessed. They explained that they had been enchanted to visit the underground castle and dance every night. Grateful to Jack for uncovering the mystery, the king offered him his choice of one of the princesses' hands in marriage. Jack chose the eldest princess, whom he had admired for her grace and kindness. The king kept his word and gave them a splendid wedding. He also ensured that the magical portal was sealed, freeing the princesses from their nightly enchantment. Jack and the eldest princess ruled the kingdom with wisdom and compassion. The 11 other princesses also found happiness, each marrying noble and kind suitors. The magical underground world faded into legend, but the story of the 12 dancing princesses and the brave soldier who discovered their secret lived on. And so, they all lived happily ever after, in a kingdom filled with joy and dancing. In a quaint village nestled between rolling hills and whispering streams, there lived a poor miller who, in his desperation to impress the king, boasted that his daughter could spin straw into gold. The king, intrigued by the miller's claim, summoned the miller's daughter to his palace. Terrified, the miller's daughter entered the grand chamber where the king awaited. "Spin this straw into gold by morning," the king commanded, gesturing to a room filled with bales of straw and a spinning wheel. Alone and with tears streaming down her face, the miller's daughter tried to spin the straw into gold, but to no avail. As despair consumed her, a strange little man appeared before her. "I can spin the straw into gold for you," he said, his voice like the rustling of leaves in the wind. "But what will you give me in return?" Desperate, the miller's daughter promised the little man her necklace, and with a wave of his hand, he spun the straw into gleaming gold. The next morning, the king was astonished by the sight and demanded even more gold from the miller's daughter. Once again, the little man appeared, and the miller's daughter offered him her ring in exchange for his help. Again, he transformed the straw into gold. The king, impressed by her apparent talent, married her and made her queen. As time passed, the queen gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. But the happiness was short-lived when the little man returned, demanding the queen's firstborn child as payment for his services. Distraught, the queen begged him to spare her child, offering him all the wealth in the kingdom. But the little man was unmoved. "Only if you can guess my name within 3 days," he said with a sly grin, "will I spare your child." The queen, determined to save her baby, sent messengers far and wide to discover the little man's name. On the first day, they returned empty-handed. On the second day, they brought back tales of strange names, but none that matched the little man's. The queen despaired, fearing she would lose her child to the mysterious creature. On the third day, as the sun dipped below the horizon, one of the messengers stumbled upon a hidden glen deep in the forest. There, by a crackling fire, danced the little man, chanting a name, Rumpelstiltskin. "Rumpelstiltskin is my name, and none shall know it." With newfound hope, the messenger rushed back to the queen and shared the name. When Rumpelstiltskin appeared that evening, the queen called out his name, causing him to shriek in anger and vanish into thin air, never to be seen again. The queen was overjoyed, and the kingdom celebrated the return of the precious baby girl. From that day forward, the queen and her daughter lived happily, surrounded by love and laughter, and the tale of Rumpelstiltskin served as a reminder of the power of courage, wit, and the bonds of family. In a quaint cottage nestled within a sun-dappled meadow, there lived an elderly woman who longed for a child of her own. One spring day, while tending to her garden, she discovered a magical flower blooming beneath a patch of violets. Delighted, she gently plucked the flower and cradled it in her hands. To her astonishment, nestled within the petals was a tiny girl no bigger than her thumb. The elderly woman named her Thumbelina and raised her with love and care. Despite her size, Thumbelina possessed a heart as pure as the morning dew. She danced with the butterflies, sang with the birds, and tended to the flowers in the garden. One evening, as the moon cast its silvery glow over the meadow, Thumbelina was captured by a curious creature, a toad. The toad had been searching for a companion for her son, and she believed Thumbelina would be the perfect match. Before Thumbelina could protest, the toad whisked her away to her murky pond. Terrified and alone, Thumbelina wept for her lost home. But her tears caught the attention of a group of fish who nibbled at the lily pad prison until it broke free. Thumbelina floated downstream until she came to rest upon the leaf of a water lily. As she drifted along the river, Thumbelina encountered many creatures: a friendly beetle, a kind mouse, and even a reclusive mole. Each offered her shelter and companionship, but none felt like home. Still, Thumbelina remained hopeful that she would one day find her place in the world. One night, as summer turned to autumn, Thumbelina stumbled upon a grand flower palace hidden deep within the forest. Inside, She discovered the most handsome fairy prince she had ever seen. He was enchanted by Thumbelina's beauty and kindness and asked her to be his bride. Overjoyed, Thumbelina accepted, and together they ruled over the flower kingdom with love and compassion. The flowers bloomed brighter, the birds sang sweeter, and the world seemed to rejoice in their union. And so, Thumbelina found her happily ever after, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of love to overcome even the greatest of obstacles. Once upon a time, in a kingdom far away, there lived a prince who longed to marry a real princess. He traveled the world searching for one, but he was always uncertain whether the princesses he met were true royalty. He returned home, feeling discouraged and wondering if he would ever find his true princess. One evening, as a fierce storm raged outside, there was a knock on the castle door. The old king himself went to open it. Standing there was a young woman, drenched from head to toe, her clothes muddy and torn from the journey. She claimed to be a princess who had been lost in the storm. The queen, skeptical of her claim, decided to test the young woman's royal status. We shall see if she is truly a princess, she thought. She invited the girl inside, offering her warm clothes and a place to rest for the night. The queen then went to the guest bedroom and devised a clever plan. She took a tiny pea and placed it on the bedstead. Then, she ordered her servants to stack 20 mattresses on top of the pea, followed by 20 feather beds. The bed towered high, and the queen smiled, confident in her test. She told the young woman, "Here is your bed for the night. Sleep well." The next morning, the queen eagerly asked, "How did you sleep, my dear?" "Oh, it was awful," the young woman exclaimed. "I hardly closed my eyes all night. There was something hard in the bed, and I am bruised all over. It was as if I were lying on something sharp." The queen's eyes widened in astonishment. Only a true princess could feel the pea through such a great number of mattresses and feather beds. The queen joyfully declared, "You are indeed a real princess." The prince, hearing this, was overjoyed. He had finally found a true princess, someone so sensitive that she could feel a tiny pea through all those layers. He knew she was the one he had been searching for. They spent time getting to know each other, and it was clear that they were a perfect match. The prince and the princess were soon married in a grand celebration. The story of the princess and the pea spread throughout the kingdom and beyond, becoming a beloved tale of how true nobility and sensitivity are found in the smallest of details. And so, the prince and his true princess lived happily ever after, ruling their kingdom with kindness and wisdom, always remembering the tiny pea that brought them together. Once upon a time, in a charming village, there lived two best friends, a boy named Kai and a girl named Gerda. They were inseparable, spending their days playing in the garden, tending to their flowers, and dreaming up adventures. Kai and Gerda's friendship was pure and strong, like the bond between siblings. One winter, as snowflakes danced in the air, Kai and Gerda sat by the window, watching the frost patterns grow on the glass. An old legend told of the Snow Queen, a beautiful but icy ruler who lived in a distant land of eternal winter. She was said to be as cold-hearted as the ice she commanded. One day, while Kai was playing outside, a sinister thing happened. Two tiny shards from a magical mirror, crafted by a mischievous troll, flew into Kai's eye and heart. The mirror had the power to distort everything it reflected, making beautiful things appear ugly and evil. From that moment on, Kai changed. He became cruel and mean, mocking Gerda and ignoring their flowers. Winter deepened, and one day, as Kai was sledding, he encountered a grand sleigh driven by a woman dressed in shimmering white. It was the Snow Queen. She kissed Kai on the forehead, making him forget Gerda and his old life. Enchanted, Kai climbed into the sleigh and disappeared into the snowy wilderness. Gerda was heartbroken when Kai didn't return. Determined to find him, she set out on a brave journey. She traveled through forests and fields, asking everyone she met if they had seen her friend. Along the way, she received help from kind strangers who were touched by her courage and love. In a dark forest, Gerda met a wise old woman who gave her a magic flower and told her to follow its glow. The flower guided her to a palace where a prince and princess lived. They gave her warm clothes and a golden carriage to continue her journey. Gerda thanked them and traveled on, her determination unwavering. As she ventured further north, Gerda encountered a talking reindeer named Bay. He had heard of the Snow Queen's palace and offered to take her there. They traveled together, braving fierce winds and snowstorms. On their way, they met a little robber girl who, impressed by Gerda's bravery, decided to help them. She gave them food and a small knife for protection. Finally, Gerda and Bay reached the Snow Queen's icy palace. It was a magnificent but chilling sight, with glittering ice sculptures and snowflakes swirling in the air. Gerda entered the palace, her heart pounding with fear and hope. She found Kai sitting on a frozen throne, his eyes blank and his heart as cold as the ice around him. "Kai!" Gerda cried, running to him, but he did not recognize her. Desperate, she hugged him tightly, and her warm tears fell onto his chest. The tears melted the ice in Kai's heart, and the shard from the troll's mirror dissolved. Kai blinked and looked at Gerda, his eyes filling with recognition and love. The Snow Queen's spell was broken. As the palace began to crumble, Kai and Gerda escaped with Bee's help. They returned home, where spring had arrived, melting the snow and bringing life back to their village. The flowers in their garden bloomed brighter than ever, a symbol of their unbreakable bond. Kai and Gerda's adventure became a cherished story in their village, reminding everyone of the power of love, friendship, and perseverance. They grew up to be wise and kind, always remembering the journey that had brought them closer together. And so, Kai and Gerda lived happily ever after, their hearts forever warm, and their friendship as strong as the blooming flowers in their garden. In the heart of a vast kingdom, there lived a king whose greatest desire was to find a worthy successor to his throne. To test the mettle of his 3 sons, he devised a challenge. Whoever could bring him the most beautiful and precious thing in the world would inherit the kingdom. The eldest son, driven by ambition, set out to find the most exquisite jewel. The second son, motivated by greed, sought the rarest treasure. But it was the youngest son, humble and pure of heart, who stumbled upon a humble bee. This bee, however, was no ordinary insect. It was a magical creature, blessed by the fairy queen herself. Guided by the bee, the youngest son embarked on a journey filled with trials and challenges. Along the way, he encountered a talking fox, a ferocious lion, and a treacherous giant, each demanding a share of his provisions. Through wit and kindness, the youngest son outsmarted his adversaries and earned their friendship. As they journeyed deeper into the enchanted forest, the bee led the youngest son to a magnificent castle, shrouded in mystery. Inside, he discovered a garden unlike any other, where precious gems glistened in the moonlight and flowers bloomed in every hue imaginable. At the heart of the garden stood the queen bee herself, surrounded by her loyal subjects. Moved by the beauty and grace of the queen bee, the youngest son approached her with reverence and offered her a simple token of his gratitude. Touched by his sincerity, the queen bee revealed her true form, a radiant fairy queen, and bestowed upon him the most precious gift of all, the secret to true happiness. With this newfound wisdom, the youngest son returned to his father's kingdom and presented the queen bee as his gift. The king, recognizing the purity of his son's heart, declared him the rightful heir to the throne. And so, the kingdom prospered under the rule of a wise and compassionate king, guided by the lessons learned from the humble queen bee. The tale of the queen bee serves as a timeless reminder that true wealth and happiness lie not in material riches, but in the purity of one's heart and the kindness shown to others. In the heart of a bustling coastal town, there lived a humble fisherman named Hans. Despite the toil of his labor, Hans could barely make ends meet, and he often returned home with empty nets and a heavy heart. One day, while casting his nets into the shimmering sea, fisherman Hans caught sight of a glimmering object caught in the meshes. To his astonishment, it was a golden crab, its shell gleaming like the sun's rays, dancing on the water. "Please spare my life, kind fisherman," pleaded the golden crab in a voice as soft as the whispering waves. "In return, I shall grant you 3 wishes." Fisherman Hans, struck by the crab's offer, hesitated for a moment before accepting. "Very well," he said, "I wish for a bountiful catch every time I cast my nets." As soon as the words left his lips, Fisherman Hans cast his nets once more, and to his amazement, they were filled to the brim with an abundance of fish, shimmering like silver in the sunlight. Overjoyed, Hans returned home, where he and his family feasted on the fruits of his miraculous catch. With newfound hope and confidence, Fisherman Hans ventured out to sea again the next day, and once more, his nets overflowed with fish, fulfilling his second wish. As word of Hans's good fortune spread throughout the town, envy and greed crept into the hearts of his neighbors. Among them was the mayor's son, a lazy and entitled young man who coveted Fisherman Hans's golden crab. Determined to possess it for himself, the mayor's son hatched a cunning plan. Under the guise of friendship, he invited Fisherman Hans to his mansion for a lavish feast, where he cunningly persuaded Hans to reveal the secret of his success. Unaware of the mayor's son's true intentions, Fisherman Hans naively confessed about the golden crab and its miraculous powers. Seizing the opportunity, the mayor's son stole away into the night, determined to find the crab and claim its wishes as his own. As Fisherman Hans returned home, he was met with an empty net and a heavy heart. Realizing the betrayal, he set out in pursuit of the mayor's son, determined to reclaim what was rightfully his. Meanwhile, the mayor's son had reached the seashore, where he spotted the golden crab glimmering in the moonlight. With greed burning in his heart, he reached out to seize the crab, but before he could lay a hand on it, the crab vanished into the depths of the sea, leaving behind only a shimmering trail of gold. Defeated and humbled, the mayor's son returned home empty-handed, while Fisherman Hans, with a heavy heart but wiser for the experience, continued to cast his nets into the sea, grateful for the simple joys that life had to offer. And though the golden crab was gone, its lessons of gratitude, humility, and the consequences of greed remained etched in the hearts of all who had encountered its golden glow. Once upon a time, in a quaint village, nestled amidst lush green forests, there lived a kind-hearted woodcutter named Hans. Hans was known throughout the village for his gentle nature and unwavering dedication to his work. He lived in a modest cottage with his wife, Marie, and their 3 sons, Peter, Paul, and Patrick. One day, while Hans was out in the forest gathering wood, he stumbled upon a magical pink flower unlike any he had ever seen before. Entranced by its beauty and mesmerizing fragrance, he plucked the flower and brought it home to his family. As soon as Hans presented the flower to Marie, a strange and wondrous transformation began to take place. The petals of the flower slowly unfurled, revealing 3 tiny, exquisite fairies nestled within. These fairies, each dressed in robes of shimmering pink, introduced themselves as the guardians of the forest. In gratitude for freeing them from the confines of the flower, the fairies granted Hans and Marie 3 wishes, one for each of their sons. Overjoyed by this unexpected blessing, Hans and Marie discussed their wishes carefully, wanting nothing but the best for their beloved children. For Peter, the eldest and most adventurous of the 3 brothers, they wished for bravery and courage to face whatever challenges lay ahead in life. With a twinkle in their eyes, the fairies bestowed upon Peter a cloak woven from the finest threads of courage, imbuing him with the strength and resilience to overcome any obstacle. Next, they turned to Paul, the middle son, whose gentle spirit and kind heart endeared him to all who knew him. For Paul, they wished for wisdom and compassion, qualities that would guide him on the path to becoming a wise and benevolent leader. In response, the fairies gifted Paul a golden amulet that glimmered with the light of knowledge, granting him the wisdom to make sound decisions and the empathy to understand the needs of others. Finally, they came to Patrick, the youngest and most mischievous of the brothers, whose boundless energy and infectious laughter brought joy to everyone around him. For Patrick, they wished for happiness and contentment, knowing that a joyful heart would sustain him through life's trials and tribulations. With a playful wink, the fairies sprinkled Patrick with golden dust, filling his soul with an everlasting sense of joy and wonder. As the fairies bid farewell and vanished into the depths of the forest, Hans and Marie marveled at the miraculous gifts bestowed upon their sons. From that day forth, Peter, Paul, and Patrick embarked on their own individual journeys, armed with the invaluable treasures of courage, wisdom, and happiness. Through their adventures and trials, the brothers remained steadfast in their bond of love and loyalty, overcoming every obstacle that crossed their path. And though their paths diverged and their destinies unfolded in different ways, the lessons they learned and the values they upheld always led them back to one another, united in the enduring strength of family and the timeless magic of the pink. Once upon a time, in a quaint village nestled between rolling hills and murmuring brooks, there lived a humble maiden named Gretel. She was known far and wide for her kind heart and gentle demeanor. Yet, Gretel had one flaw that caused her much distress. She couldn't spin yarn for the life of her. No matter how hard she tried, her spindle remained still, her threads tangled, and her patience worn thin. One day, Gretel's exasperated mother declared, "Enough is enough. If you can't spin, then you can't stay here and eat our bread. You must leave this house and never return until you've learned to spin." With a heavy heart, Gretel packed a meager bundle and set off into the unknown. As she walked along the forest path, tears streaked her cheeks and worries gnawed at her mind. Where shall I go? How will I survive? She wondered aloud. Just then, she stumbled upon a cottage hidden amidst the trees. Curiosity piqued, Gretel approached and peered through the window. Inside, 3 peculiar women were spinning yarn with remarkable speed and skill. They noticed Gretel and beckoned her inside. "We've been watching you, dear child," they said in unison. "We know of your plight, and we're here to help. In exchange for a favor, we shall spin the yarn you need." Relieved and grateful, Gretel readily agreed. The 3 spinners set to work, their spindles whirring and threads dancing as if by magic. In no time at all, they produced an abundance of fine yarn, more than enough to satisfy Gretel's mother. As promised, the 3 spinners made their request. When the time comes, you must invite us to your wedding feast, they said solemnly. With a heartfelt promise, Gretel bid farewell to her newfound friends and returned home. Her mother was astounded by the treasure of yarn Gretel presented, and soon, the news of her miraculous spinning spread throughout the village. In due time, Gretel's fortunes changed when she caught the eye of a wealthy nobleman. Enchanted by her beauty and kindness, he proposed marriage, and Gretel joyfully accepted. As preparations for the wedding began, Gretel remembered her promise to the 3 spinners. True to her word, she sent an invitation to the cottage in the woods, and on the day of the feast, the 3 spinners arrived, dressed in their finest attire. The villagers marveled at their grace and elegance, unaware of their humble origins. During the festivities, the 3 spinners approached Gretel and whispered, "You have honored your promise, dear child. As a reward, we bestow upon you the gift of spinning. From this day forth, your spindle shall never falter, and your thread shall weave tailies of happiness and prosperity." And so, Gretel's wedding day marked not only the union of 2 souls, but also the fulfillment of a promise and the beginning of a new chapter filled with hope and abundance. The 3 spinners' gift remained with Gretel for the rest of her days, a reminder of the kindness she had received and the power of gratitude and generosity. Once upon a time, in a small Swedish village, there lived a poor man named Per. Per had nothing but a small, rundown cottage and a few meager possessions. Despite his hardships, he was kind-hearted and always willing to help others. One cold winter day, while walking through the forest to gather firewood, Per stumbled upon an old woman lying in the snow. She was shivering and looked close to death. Per quickly wrapped her in his coat and carried her back to his cottage. After nursing the old woman back to health, she revealed herself to be a powerful sorceress. In gratitude for Per's kindness, she decided to grant him a wish. Per, who had always dreamed of traveling the world and escaping his life of poverty, wished for the means to do so. The sorceress handed him a small, unassuming bag and said, "This bag contains 3 magical dogs. Whenever you are in danger or need assistance, call upon them, and they will come to your aid." Per thanked the sorceress and set off on his journey. He traveled for many days, crossing forests, mountains, and rivers. Eventually, he arrived in a distant kingdom ruled by a cruel and greedy king. The kingdom was in turmoil, and the people were suffering under heavy taxes and harsh laws. Per, seeing the plight of the people, decided to help. He soon learned that the king had 3 beautiful daughters who were kept locked away in a tower. The king had promised their hands in marriage to any man who could complete 3 impossible tasks. Many had tried and failed, losing their lives in the process. Per, determined to free the princesses and bring justice to the kingdom, decided to take on the challenge. The first task was to retrieve a golden apple from the top of the tallest tree in the kingdom, a tree that no one had ever been able to climb. Per stood before the tree and called upon the first dog. Instantly, a large, powerful dog appeared. With its help, Per was able to scale the tree effortlessly and retrieve the golden apple. The king, astonished but not yet defeated, presented the second task. The second task was to bring back the king's lost crown, which had been stolen by a fierce dragon and hidden in a cave guarded by the creature. Per called upon the second dog, a swift and fearless hound. Together, they ventured into the dragon's lair. The dog distracted the dragon, allowing Per to seize the crown and escape unharmed. The king, growing increasingly anxious, presented the final task. The third and most difficult task was to defeat the king's greatest enemy, a neighboring warlord who threatened to invade the kingdom. This warlord was known for his invincibility and his army of skilled warriors. Per called upon the third dog, a massive, ferocious beast. With the dog's help, Per led a small band of loyal villagers into battle. The dog fought valiantly, and together they managed to defeat the warlord and his army. With all 3 tasks completed, Per returned to the king's palace. The king, furious that his challenges had been bested, refused to honor his promise. Instead, he ordered his guards to seize Per. But Per, quick-witted and brave, called upon all 3 dogs. They sprang to his defense, and with their combined strength, they overpowered the king's guards. Seeing the king's tyranny and treachery, the people of the kingdom rose up in rebellion. They stormed the palace, capturing the king and freeing the princesses. Grateful for Per's bravery and leadership, the people proclaimed him their new king. Per married the eldest princess, and together they ruled the kingdom with fairness and compassion. Under Per's reign, the kingdom flourished. The heavy taxes were lifted, and the people were free to live their lives in peace and prosperity. Per never forgot the old sorceress who had given him the magical dogs, and he always treated his subjects with the same kindness and generosity that he had shown her. As for the 3 dogs, they became Per's loyal companions, always ready to assist him whenever he needed them. And so, the kingdom thrived under the wise and just rule of King Per, aided by his faithful magical dogs, and the legend of their adventures was passed down through generations, inspiring countless tales of bravery and kindness. Once upon a time in a far-off land, there was a mighty emperor who had 3 sons, all brave and wise. His kingdom was rich and vast, but the emperor was troubled by a recurring nightmare that haunted him every night. In his dream, a mysterious voice told him that his days were numbered unless he obtained the enchanted water from the well of the Fairy of the Dawn. This water was said to cure any ailment and grant eternal life, but it was guarded by the powerful and elusive Fairy of the Dawn. Desperate to save his father, the eldest son set out on a quest to find the well. He journeyed far and wide, encountering many dangers, but he failed to return. The second son then took up the challenge, but he too disappeared without a trace. Finally, the youngest son, Petru, a kind-hearted and determined young man, decided to seek the well. The emperor, though fearful of losing his last son, could not deny Petru his wish. He blessed him and provided him with a magical sword, a loyal horse, and provisions for the journey. Petru embarked on his journey and soon encountered a treacherous forest filled with dark creatures and twisting paths. Guided by his courage and the wisdom of his horse, Petru managed to navigate the forest. He then reached a vast desert where he met a wise old hermit. The hermit, impressed by Petru's bravery and sincerity, gave him 3 magical objects: a cloak of invisibility, a healing potion, and a ring that could summon powerful allies. Continuing his quest, Petru faced numerous challenges, including crossing a raging river and climbing a perilous mountain. Each time, his magical items and the guidance of the hermit helped him overcome the obstacles. At last, Petru reached the enchanted garden, where the well of the Fairy of the Dawn was hidden. The garden was filled with the most beautiful flowers and trees, but it was also heavily guarded by fierce creatures and magical traps. Using his cloak of invisibility, Petru managed to sneak past the guards and approach the well. At the well, Petru encountered the Fairy of the Dawn herself, a being of immense beauty and power. She was surrounded by an aura of golden light and guarded the well with a fierce determination. The fairy, knowing Petru's intentions, challenged him to a series of tests to prove his worthiness. The first test was a riddle that required great wisdom. Petru, remembering the teachings of the hermit, solved it with ease. The second test was a physical challenge where Petru had to fight a powerful dragon. Using his magical sword and the help of his summoned allies, he defeated the dragon. For the final test, the Fairy of the Dawn asked Petru to show his true character. She created an illusion where Petru had to choose between saving a village from destruction or taking the enchanted water for himself. Without hesitation, Petru chose to save the village, demonstrating his selflessness and bravery. Impressed by his deeds and purity of heart, the Fairy of the Dawn granted Petru a vial of the enchanted water. She also revealed the fate of his brothers, who had failed the tests due to their lack of humility and selflessness. She revived them and allowed them to return home with Petru. Petru returned to his kingdom with the enchanted water, greeted with joy and relief by his father and the people. The emperor drank the water and was immediately healed, his strength and vitality restored. The kingdom celebrated Petru's return and the miraculous cure of their beloved ruler. The emperor, recognizing Petru's bravery and wisdom, declared him the heir to the throne. Under Petru's rule, the kingdom prospered and flourished, becoming a beacon of justice and peace. And so, the tale of Petru, the brave prince who conquered the trials of the Fairy of the Dawn, was passed down through generations, inspiring countless others with his courage and selflessness. The magical well and the fairy remained a guarded secret, known only to those pure of heart who might one day seek its wonders. Once upon a time in ancient Greece, there was a powerful king named Erysichthon, known far and wide for his insatiable greed and cruelty. He had everything a king could desire, but his heart remained devoid of kindness and compassion. His kingdom suffered under his harsh rule, and the people longed for a change. In a distant corner of the kingdom, there lived a humble fisherman named Phaedrus. Unlike the king, Phaedrus was kind-hearted and content with his simple life. One day, while fishing near a secluded part of the shore, Phaedrus saw a shimmering object floating in the water. To his astonishment, he pulled out a golden apple. As he examined it, a beautiful nymph appeared before him. She introduced herself as Daphne, the guardian of the golden apples, which were gifts from the gods to those of pure heart. Daphne told Phaedrus that there were 3 such apples, each possessing immense power. The first granted wisdom, the second brought eternal youth, and the third bestowed limitless wealth. She warned him, however, that these apples were not meant for the greedy and corrupt. She entrusted Phaedrus with the task of keeping the apples safe and using them wisely. Meanwhile, King Erysichthon heard rumors of the golden apples and became consumed with a desire to possess them. He sent his soldiers to scour the kingdom and find the apples. Phaedrus, knowing the king's intentions, decided to seek out the remaining 2 apples before the king's men could find them. Guided by Daphne, Phaedrus embarked on a perilous journey. His first destination was the Oracle of Delphi, where he sought guidance. The Oracle, sensing his pure heart, told him that the second apple lay within the labyrinth of Crete, guarded by the fearsome Minotaur. Undeterred, Phaedrus sailed to Crete and entered the labyrinth. With his courage and wits, he outsmarted the Minotaur and retrieved the second golden apple. His next destination was the island of the Sirens, where the third apple was hidden. The Sirens, with their enchanting voices, lured sailors to their doom. Phaedrus, aware of their tricks, filled his ears with beeswax and tied himself to the mast of his ship. He resisted their songs and found the third golden apple hidden among the rocks. Upon returning home, Phaedrus discovered that King Erysichthon had captured Daphne and was threatening to destroy the sacred grove where the apples were originally kept. Phaedrus, with the 3 golden apples in his possession, knew he had to confront the king and save Daphne. Phaedrus approached the palace and offered the golden apples to King Erysichthon on the condition that he released Daphne and promised to rule justly. The king, blinded by his greed, agreed and immediately consumed the apple of eternal youth. To his horror, instead of becoming youthful, he began to age rapidly, a punishment for his wickedness. The gods had intervened, ensuring that the apple's powers would only work for the pure of heart. As the king withered away, Phaedrus used the apple of wisdom to restore balance and peace to the kingdom. He distributed the wealth from the 3rd apple among the people, alleviating their suffering and rebuilding the kingdom's prosperity. Daphne, grateful for Phaedrus's bravery and kindness, revealed her true form as a goddess sent by the gods to test the hearts of men. She blessed Phaedrus with eternal happiness and prosperity. Phaedrus married Daphne, and they ruled the kingdom together, bringing an era of unprecedented peace and prosperity. Under their wise and benevolent rule, the kingdom flourished. Phaedrus's story of courage, selflessness, and wisdom became a cherished legend, teaching future generations the value of a pure heart and the true meaning of wealth and power. Once upon a time in a quaint Italian village, there lived a poor widow with her 3 beautiful daughters, Isabella, Rosa, and Bianca. Each sister was not only fair of face, but also kind-hearted and virtuous. Despite their humble circumstances, they were happy, finding joy in simple pleasures and each other's company. One day, while walking through the village, the sisters met an old woman who seemed weary and hungry. Without hesitation, they invited her to their home, offering her food and shelter. The old woman, grateful for their kindness, revealed herself to be a fairy in disguise. To reward their generosity, she bestowed upon each sister a unique gift. To Isabella, the eldest, she gave a golden spinning wheel that could spin threads of pure gold. To Rosa, the middle sister, she gifted a golden loom that wove fabrics of unmatched beauty. To Bianca, the youngest, she granted a golden embroidery needle that created patterns of exquisite artistry. The fairy warned them to use these gifts wisely and for the benefit of others, not for greed or vanity. With their magical gifts, the sisters quickly gained fame and fortune. Their beautiful creations were sought after by nobles and royalty across the land, and soon they moved from their modest cottage to a grand villa. Despite their newfound wealth, they remained humble and generous, helping the poor and needy in their village. News of the sisters' talents reached the ears of a greedy king in a distant kingdom. He devised a plan to seize their magical items for himself. Disguised as a merchant, he visited the sisters and offered them an enormous sum of money for their spinning wheel, loom, and embroidery needle. The sisters, sensing his true intentions, politely declined. Enraged by their refusal, the king plotted to take the items by force. He sent his soldiers to the villa under the cover of night. The sisters, realizing they were in danger, decided to flee. They took their magical gifts and sought refuge in the dense forest outside the village. While in the forest, the sisters encountered a handsome prince who had been cursed by an evil sorcerer. The curse could only be broken by acts of true kindness and selflessness. The prince, struck by the sisters' beauty and kindness, offered them shelter in his castle. The prince's castle was in a state of disrepair, having been neglected due to the curse. The sisters, with their magical gifts, decided to help restore it. Isabella spun golden threads to repair the tapestries. Rosa wove magnificent fabrics to replace the worn drapes. And Bianca used her embroidery needle to create beautiful patterns that adorn the castle walls. As they worked, the prince fell deeply in love with Bianca, the youngest sister, who reciprocated his feelings. The castle, once a symbol of desolation, became a beacon of beauty and hope. The acts of kindness and the transformation of the castle broke the sorcerer's curse, restoring the prince to his true form. The prince, now free from the curse, asked Bianca for her hand in marriage. The two older sisters, happy for their sibling, were also soon courted by noblemen who had been captivated by their beauty and virtue. Isabella and Rosa married these noblemen, and all three sisters were united in happiness and prosperity. Their story reached the ears of the greedy king, who, realizing his folly and the futility of his greed, sought forgiveness. The sisters, ever kind-hearted, forgave him and shared their fortune with his kingdom, bringing peace and prosperity to both realms. The three sisters and their families lived in harmony, their bond unbroken by time or circumstance. Their tale of kindness, generosity, and the wise use of their magical gifts became a legend, inspiring generations to come. In a distant kingdom, shrouded in the mystery of enchanted forests and whispered legends, there lived a young couple deeply in love, Jorin and Joringel. Their affection for one another was as strong as the ancient oaks that stood sentinel in the nearby woods. But their happiness was to be tested by the sinister presence of an evil sorceress who cast a dark shadow over the land. The sorceress, known for her malevolent powers and insatiable thirst for mischief, had taken a keen interest in Jorin's beauty. Consumed by jealousy, she plotted to separate the lovers and claim Jorin for herself. With a flick of her wand and a malevolent cackle, she transformed Jorin into a nightingale, trapping her in the form of a bird and imprisoning her within the confines of her enchanted castle. Heartbroken and desperate, Joringel set out on a perilous journey to rescue his beloved Jorin from the clutches of the sorceress. Armed only with his unwavering love and determination, he ventured deep into the heart of the Forbidden Forest, where the sorceress's castle lay hidden amidst the tangled branches and twisting vines. As Joringel wandered through the shadowy depths of the forest, he encountered strange and wondrous creatures, each with their own tales of sorrow and despair at the hands of the sorceress. Yet, undeterred by the dangers that lurked around every corner, he pressed onward, guided by the faint melody of Jorin's voice echoing through the trees. At last, he reached the sorceress's castle, a forbidding fortress shrouded in darkness and mystery. With a steady hand and a resolute heart, he confronted the sorceress in her lair, demanding the release of his beloved Jorin. But the sorceress, wicked and cunning, would not relinquish her hold on Jorin so easily. With a wave of her wand, she summoned a flock of dark-winged birds to attack Joringel, seeking to thwart his valiant efforts and keep Jorin imprisoned forever. Undeterred by the sorceress's dark magic, Joringel reached into the depths of his soul, calling upon the power of his love for Jorin to break the sorceress's enchantment. With each heartfelt plea, the darkness that surrounded Jorin began to dissipate until at last she stood before him once more, her beauty restored and her spirit free. In a moment of triumph and joy, Jorin and Joringel embraced, their love shining brightly amidst the darkness of the sorceress's castle. And as the first rays of dawn illuminated the sky, they emerged from the forest together, hand in hand, ready to face whatever trials the future may hold, secure in the knowledge that their love would always conquer the darkest of magic. In the heart of a distant kingdom, nestled amidst rolling hills and verdant meadows, there stood a grand castle adorned with towers that scraped the sky and walls that whispered tales of ages past. Within this castle lived a young princess, renowned for her beauty and kindness, named Annabelle. Her days were spent wandering the castle gardens, tending to the flowers and singing melodies that enchanted all who heard them. One day, as Annabelle wandered farther than she had ever ventured before, she stumbled upon a hidden grove at the edge of the forest. There, amidst the towering trees and tangled undergrowth, she discovered a hidden well, its water shimmering with an otherworldly light. Drawn by curiosity, Annabelle leaned closer to peer into the depths of the well, only to lose her balance and fall headlong into its depths. When Annabelle awoke, she found herself in a strange and wondrous realm unlike any she had ever seen before. Towering above her stood a towering figure, his face weathered and his eyes filled with sorrow. This was Rink Rink, the guardian of the well and the keeper of its secrets. Rink Rink, cursed by a wicked enchantment, had been doomed to spend eternity guarding the well and protecting its mystical waters from those who would seek to misuse them. But as Annabelle soon discovered, there was more to Rink Rink's curse than met the eye, for he was not always the hulking giant that stood before her. Once, he had been a handsome prince, beloved by all who knew him. Long ago, Rink Rink had been cursed by an evil sorceress who sought to claim the well's powers for her own. In a fit of rage and desperation, she had transformed him into a monstrous giant and banished him to the depths of the forest, where he remained trapped for centuries, unable to break free from the chains of his curse. Moved by compassion and a desire to help, Annabelle vowed to free Rink Rink from his curse and restore him to his former glory. With each passing day, she visited him in the hidden grove, bringing him food and companionship and listening to his tales of the world beyond the forest. Together, Annabelle and Rink Rink embarked on a quest to break the sorceress's curse and reclaim their freedom. Through trials and tribulations, they journeyed across the kingdom, facing dangers and overcoming obstacles with courage and determination. And though their path was fraught with peril, they never wavered in their belief that love and kindness would prevail in the end. In the final confrontation with the sorceress, Annabelle's unwavering bravery and Rink Rink's selfless sacrifice shattered the enchantment that bound him, restoring him to his true form once more. As the sorceress's powers waned and the curse was lifted, Annabelle and Rink Rink emerged from the forest victorious, their bond stronger than ever before. And so, amidst the jubilant celebrations of the kingdom, Annabelle and Rink Rink stood side by side, their hearts overflowing with gratitude and love. For they had proven that even the darkest of curses could be overcome with courage, compassion, and the enduring power of friendship. In a kingdom shrouded in the mists of time, there reigned a mighty king whose wealth and power knew no bounds. His kingdom, nestled amidst rolling hills and verdant forests, was the envy of all who beheld its beauty, with riches beyond imagining and treasures beyond compare. Yet, despite his vast fortune and his majestic palace of gold, the king harbored a secret sorrow that gnawed at his heart like a serpent's fang. For the king's beloved daughter, the fair and gentle Princess Helena, had fallen gravely ill, her once luminous eyes dimmed with the shadow of sickness. Desperate to save his daughter from the clutches of death, the king sought the advice of the wisest sages and the most skilled healers in the land, but none could offer him a cure for her ailment. In his despair, the king turned to darker forces, striking a bargain with a mysterious stranger who appeared before him in the dead of night, promising to restore Princess Helena to health in exchange for a terrible price. The stranger led the king to the summit of a distant mountain, where a great golden castle stood gleaming in the moonlight. This was the realm of the king of the Golden Mountain, a powerful and enigmatic ruler whose dominion extended far beyond the mortal realm. With a heavy heart and a sense of foreboding, the king entered the castle, where he was greeted by the sight of the king of the Golden Mountain himself, seated upon a throne of solid gold. The king of the Golden Mountain offered the king a deal. In exchange for his daughter's life, the king must relinquish his own soul and serve as a servant in the Golden Mountain for 7 years. Desperate to save Princess Helena, the king agreed to the bargain, sealing his fate with a solemn vow. For 7 long years, the king toiled in the service of the king of the Golden Mountain, his days filled with endless toil, and his nights haunted by visions of his beloved daughter. But as the years passed, and his time of servitude drew to a close, the king's thoughts turned to Princess Helena and the kingdom he had left behind. Determined to return to his kingdom and reunite with his daughter, the king begged the king of the Golden Mountain to release him from his vow. Moved by the king's devotion and his unwavering love for Princess Helena, the king of the Golden Mountain granted his request, restoring him to his rightful place as ruler of the kingdom. Reunited with Princess Helena and filled with gratitude for his second chance, the king vowed to cherish every moment he had with his daughter and to live each day as if it were his last. And as the kingdom rejoiced and celebrated their king's return, the king knew that no treasure in the world could compare to the love he shared with his beloved daughter. In the realm of ancient Russia, where tales of wonder and magic danced upon the winds, there lived a mighty ruler known as Tsar Sultan. His kingdom prospered under his wise and just rule. Yet the Tsar yearned for an heir to carry on his legacy. One day, as Tsar Sultan walked along the shores of the vast sea, he encountered a mysterious old woman who bestowed upon him a prophecy. "Fear not, Tsar Sultan," she said, her voice carrying the wisdom of ages. "Your desire for an heir shall be fulfilled. Your queen shall bear you 3 sons, each destined for greatness, though their path shall be fraught with trials and tribulations." True to the old woman's words, Tsar Sultan's queen gave birth to 3 sons, each more handsome and noble than the last. Yet, their happiness was short-lived, for the Tsar's jealous foes spread lies and deceit, convincing him that his queen and sons were plotting against him. Heartbroken and deceived, Tsar Sultan ordered his queen and their newborn sons to be cast adrift upon the sea in a small, rickety boat. Tearfully, the queen obeyed, knowing not what fate awaited them. As the boat drifted upon the vast expanse of the sea, the queen wept for her lost kingdom and her beloved Tsar Sultan. Yet, unbeknownst to her, the hand of fate guided their journey, leading them to a remote island untouched by mortal eyes. There, amidst the lush foliage and whispering palms, the queen and her sons found refuge, their spirits buoyed by the hope of a brighter future. As the years passed, the sons grew strong and wise under their mother's loving care, unaware of their royal lineage. Meanwhile, back in the kingdom of Tsar Sultan, whispers of the queen and her son's fate reached the ears of the Tsar himself. Consumed by regret and remorse, Tsar Sultan yearned to find his lost family and make amends for his folly. With the aid of a magical swan, Tsar Sultan embarked on a quest to seek out his queen and sons. Across vast oceans and treacherous lands, he journeyed, his heart filled with longing and repentance. At last, Tsar Sultan arrived upon the remote island where his queen and sons dwelled, their reunion a testament to the power of love and forgiveness. With tears of joy and reconciliation, they embraced, their bond stronger than ever before. Together, Tsar Sultan, his queen, and their sons returned to the kingdom, where they were welcomed with open arms by their subjects. And as Sir Sultan's sons took their rightful place by their father's side, the kingdom rejoiced, knowing that their ruler's heart was finally at peace. Thus, the tale of Sir Sultan serves as a timeless reminder of the enduring power of love, forgiveness, and redemption, weaving a tapestry of magic and wonder that shall endure for generations to come. In the vast expanse of ancient Russia, where snow-capped mountains met endless forests and mighty rivers flowed, there reigned a wise and just surnamed Barandy. His kingdom flourished under his benevolent rule. Yet despite his wealth and power, Sir Barandy harbored a deep sorrow in his heart. He longed for a child to inherit his throne and carry on his legacy. One bitter winter's eve, as Sir Barandy wandered through the frost-covered woods, his prayers were answered by a mystical presence. A beautiful fairy, adorned in shimmering robes of ice and snow, appeared before him, her ethereal beauty breathtaking to behold. "Fear not, Sir Barandy," the fairy spoke, her voice as delicate as the tinkling of icicles in the wind. "Your wish for a child shall be granted. Your beloved queen shall bear you a son, destined for greatness beyond compare." Overjoyed by the fairy's promise, Sir Barandy returned to his palace, where he shared the news with his queen. Together, they awaited the arrival of their long-awaited child with hopeful hearts. True to the fairy's prophecy, the queen gave birth to a son of extraordinary beauty and grace, whom they named Prince Ivan. From the moment of his birth, it was clear that Prince Ivan was destined for greatness, his presence bringing joy and prosperity to the kingdom. Yet, as Prince Ivan grew older, dark forces conspired to threaten his destiny. A wicked sorcerer, jealous of the prince's rightful place as heir to the throne, cast a powerful spell, imprisoning Prince Ivan within the confines of an enchanted forest where time stood still and danger lurked at every turn. Determined to rescue their beloved son, Sir Barandy and the queen embarked on a perilous journey through the heart of the enchanted forest, braving treacherous beasts and cunning traps laid by the sorcerer. Guided by the wisdom of a mystical firebird, they pressed onward, their love for Prince Ivan giving them strength in the face of adversity. Along the way, they encountered magical creatures and benevolent spirits who offered aid and guidance on their quest. At last, after countless trials and tribulations, Sir Barandy and the queen reached the heart of the enchanted forest, where Prince Ivan lay imprisoned within a tower of thorns, his spirit weakened by the sorcerer's dark magic. With tears of joy and determination, Sir Barandy and the queen broke through the sorcerer's enchantment, freeing Prince Ivan from his prison and vanquishing the evil that sought to destroy their family. United once more, Sir Barandy, the queen, and Prince Ivan returned to their kingdom, where they were hailed as heroes and saviors. And as Prince Ivan ascended to his rightful place as heir to the throne, the kingdom rejoiced, knowing that their beloved prince would one day lead them with wisdom, courage, and compassion. Thus, the fairy tale of the Tsar Barandy serves as a timeless testament to the power of love, family, and resilience in the face of darkness, weaving a tapestry of magic and wonder that shall endure for generations to come. Once upon a time, a king and queen had 12 sons. The queen became pregnant again, and the king, desiring a daughter, declared that if the child was a girl, the 12 boys must die so she could inherit the kingdom unchallenged. He even prepared 12 coffins. The queen, horrified by the king's decree, secretly warned her sons and instructed them to flee into the forest. There, They swore to kill any maiden they encountered to prevent their sister from inadvertently causing their deaths. Years passed, and the queen bore a beautiful daughter named Benigna. She grew up unaware of her brother's fate. One day, she found 12 shirts in a hidden chamber and asked her mother about them. The queen explained, revealing the tragic circumstances surrounding her brother's exile. Determined to find them, Benigna set off into the forest, taking only a star-shaped ring from her mother. In the forest, Benigna stumbled upon an enchanted cottage where an old woman directed her to a clearing where her brothers lived. She approached the house and was met by a young man who, upon seeing her star-shaped ring, recognized her as their sister. He welcomed her warmly, explaining that they were the 12 princes who had fled to escape their father's wrath. Initially, the brothers were thrilled to meet Benigna. However, they soon remembered their vow to kill any maiden, including her, to ensure their safety. Reluctant and heartbroken, they agreed to test her worthiness instead. They assigned her a series of tasks, and Benigna performed them diligently, earning their trust and love. The brothers renounced their murderous vow and accepted her into their home. One day, while the brothers were out hunting, Benigna discovered a bed of lilac. Delighted by their beauty, she picked the flowers to adorn the house. Little did she know that the lilac were enchanted, and her actions transformed her brothers into ravens. Upon their return, they flew away, leaving Benigna devastated. Determined to save them, Benigna sought help from the old woman, who told her she must remain silent for 7 years to break the spell. If she uttered a single word, her brothers would remain ravens forever. Benigna embarked on this arduous journey, vowing to endure the silence for her brother's sake. Years passed, and Benigna endured many hardships, but never spoke. One day, a king found her deep in the forest, fell in love with her, and took her to his castle. Despite her silence, they married, and she bore him children. The king's wicked mother, however, despised Benigna and sought to turn the king against her. The old queen accused Benigna of witchcraft, claiming her silence was proof of her guilt. The king, pressured by his mother, sentenced Benigna to be burned at the stake. As the execution was about to proceed, the 7-year period ended, and her 12 brothers arrived in their human forms to rescue her. The brothers explained the entire story to the king, who realized his mistake and condemned his mother for her wickedness. Benigna was finally able to speak and told her tale, and the family was reunited in joy. The king and Benigna lived happily ever after, blessed by the loyalty and bravery of her 12 brothers. The kingdom rejoiced, and peace reigned over the land. This tale of familial love, perseverance, and redemption remains one of the most poignant narratives in the Brothers Grimm collection, highlighting the strength of bonds and the power of endurance against seemingly insurmountable odds. In a remote Russian village, siblings Olga and Ivan were left alone as their parents went to the market. Ignoring her responsibility, Olga let Ivan wander, only for a flock of magical swan geese to snatch him away. Determined to rescue her brother, Olga embarked on a quest. She encountered 3 sentient beings: a stove, an apple tree, and a river of milk, but her urgency blinded her to their requests for nourishment in exchange for information. Eventually, a hedgehog directed her to Baba Yaga's hut, where the swan geese had taken Ivan. Inside Baba Yaga's hut, Olga found her brother, guarded by the fearsome witch. Baba Yaga agreed to release Ivan only if Olga completed impossible tasks, spinning flax into gold, weaving straw into cloth, and baking bread without any assistance. Desperate, Olga prayed for help, and 3 white doves appeared, transforming into beautiful maidens. They completed the tasks for Olga, and Baba Yaga begrudgingly released Ivan. as they fled. Baba Yaga chased them in her flying mortar, but the maidens turned it into a mountain, thwarting her pursuit. Olga and Ivan returned home safely, where their parents rejoiced at their reunion. Olga learned the importance of kindness and humility, while Ivan was forever grateful for his sister's bravery. And so, the tale of the magic swan geese became a lesson in the power of compassion and resourcefulness, passed down through generations in Russian folklore.